Hi, I'm Dr. Vaishnavi Joshi, medical oncologist in Apollo Hospitals, Bangalore. I'm pleased to declare today's conference open.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are starting up with a researcher speak on the topic Voice of Researchers, followed by we'll be having a special lecture by Mr. Ghosh on the topic a review of the science fiction works translated into Bengali language. In line we'll be having a special lecture by Mr. Dayananda Gangadhar on the topic VFX and SF, followed by we'll be having special lecture by Dr. Deirdre Flynn on the topic SF in Ireland.
Good morning to all, dear presenters. I am Dr. Santhosh K, Assistant Professor in the Department of English in Vijayanagara Krishnadevaraya University, Bellary. I have been teaching in the same university since 10 years, and 4 students are working under me. I mainly focus on post-war memories and travel writing in my research. And now I'm looking into science fiction and science fiction studies. So today is a very special day because this conference is unique. As we witnessed many conferences, they are offline and online. And online it is on time, but this conference is unique in the sense it is pre-recorded, then it's going to display. So this recording is part of the forthcoming international conference, which is going to be held in this month. So keeping all these aspects, to brief, today we have 5 presenters. 4 students are from literature background, and 1 from, his name is Jagadish, he is from social science background. So post-pandemic period is very important period to understand what's happening around the world. So all fields, including literary field, had a big break. So now this conference is an opportunity for all of us to unite and continue our academic activity. So I must thankful to Professor Narahari sir who gave this opportunity for me to go ahead with the conference, and I would like to welcome Mohammed Hussain to go ahead with this research. So before that, I just wanted to brief. This presentation is titled as a voice of researcher. So how students from a rural university are doing the research in a different field. So our students are going to speak about what they are doing and how they are doing research. So each one of you should present 8 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, followed by questions. So I request all of you to be active and make it as a successful academic event by discussion, by asking questions, by contributing something. So I welcome all participants once again, Raj Kumar, Jagadish, Mohammed Azhar Hussain, and Sowmya and Syed, Sirajuddin Quadri, and those who are listening to this lecture in the conference, either it is through YouTube or any channel. So I welcome all of you too. And now I call Mohammed Azhar Hussain to go ahead with this presentation. Yes, and each one of you should introduce yourself, your name, very importantly, your area of research, and you can go ahead. Yes, Mohammed.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
You're audible.
Yeah. Our warm greetings to you all. My name is Mohammed Azhar Hussain. I'm pursuing PhD in the Department of English, Vijayanagara Sri Krishnadevaraya University, Bellary, under the supervision of Dr. Santhosh K. And my area of research is post-colonialism. So today I would like to present my brief research proposal to you all. So this proposal is entitled as Occidental Narratives of Oriental, Paradoxical Animadversion on India in the select works of Phillips Meadows Taylor and Rudyard Kipling. So to begin with, I would like to quote from the ballad which Rudyard Kipling has written. East is east and west is west, never shall the twain meet. And I have taken other quotation from Orientalism by Edward Said, where before the beginning of his Orientalism, he quotes East is the Carrier by Benjamin Disraeli. So what my choosing these two quotes is, my intention to choose these quotes is, one is like Rudyard Kipling, his with that east is east and west is west, never shall the twain meet. It is very much clear that he carries the view of Occidental. But when it comes to the Benjamin Disraeli, east is the carrier, it happened with Phillips Meadows Taylor, because at the age of 16, to build his career, he came to India. So it is very much appropriate to Phillips Meadows Taylor. So before getting into the topic, I would like to say, like, I am looking at how India is represented in both of the writers, and fiction as well as non-fiction, because even these writers have written the biographies, autobiographies. So how they have represented India. So it was not only in the 18th, 19th or the 20th century where we can find India in the British writings. It was not even in the 16th century, when the Renaissance was at the peak, when there was geographical discoveries. It was even before that. We can find India in the Anglo-Saxon literature too, as Robertson quote. He argues that even India was represented in Anglo-Saxon literature. So it is that much old. So India is not a new concept which was presented in the British literature. It is very old, but it is like over the period of time that the perceptions or the perspectives have changed. So moving on, even if we come across the 14th century, where we say that the English language began from Geoffrey Chaucer. So we can see even in his writing, India, he has mentioned about India. Then if we go on, it is 16th century, Renaissance, obviously. It was geographical discoveries in 1498, Vasco da Gama, when he discovered India. So he carried, it was a kind of travel writing when he carried the sketches, how India is described. So it was at that point in the 16th century. And if we look in the other major writer, John Dryden, who has written Aurangzeb as a play, which was published in 1675. And moving on to the poets, especially the metaphysical poets, John Donne, who has written The Sun Rising. We can, in the second stanza, we can find the description or the mention of India, where he says whether both the Indias of spice and mine. It is this line can be this line is mentioned in the second stanza of The Sun Rising, and this particular poem was published in the 1633. Then the other writer from the same metaphysical poet, metaphysical school of poetry, is Andrew Marvell, who writes To His Coy Mistress. So again, we can see the mention of India. So where he mentions the river Ganga. Though along Indian Ganges side, those rubies find. So this presenting India in the British literature is a very old, but we have to look into the authors in what perspectives have they find. So the same thing I'm trying to do in these two writers, Meadows Taylor as well as in Rudyard Kipling, because there is a huge scholarship arguing that Rudyard Kipling was of the view which was in favor of the British, I mean the East India Company, But in contrast to that, Meadows Taylor, when he came to India for his career, obviously he didn't find any position in the East India Company, but obviously he represented British, but he has worked under Nizam's government. So I will be looking in the both the writers, like how they have represented, and particularly the paradoxes. I will be looking at the paradoxes, how they have looked into it. So to speak with, as of now, like throughout my survey of literature or the review of literature, what till up to now I have done, there is a scholarship which also says that Meadows Taylor is carrying the view of Occidental, but I may not draw a conclusion to this, because I have to carry this research to even more. I have to develop even more the reading. So I may not conclude, but whatever I have read till today, it says that even Taylor was of the view of the Occident, because when he started writing, I mean, when he started his creative writing, the most popular work, that is Confessions of a Thug. So he himself in the introduction has said that, and as well as in his autobiography, The Story of Myself, he says that he was writing to the British audience. So what does this mean? So it was the period of the 19th century where we can find the coffee houses in British. I mean in England, we can find the coffee houses, chocolate houses, where the middle class started to read. So Taylor was addressing those audience. So keeping that in mind, he was writing. So this will be a question of debate, why Taylor was writing, because in India also this English writing English writing also started simultaneously. But why did he choose the British as the audience? What was his intention? So this is also a debatable question. So moving on, so the objective of this study is to understand the Occidental narratives on Oriental through the lens of post-colonial studies. So this is the first objective which I am looking through, why I am looking in these two writers. And next is to find the paradoxes, how Taylor has represented India and how Kipling has represented India in their creative writings. And second is to interpret how Indian culture is seen through the lens of Orientalism, how the culture is seen through this. And next is to examine the counter narratives on Oriental history by Occidental in the works of, again, Taylor and Kipling. And lastly, it is to comprehend the Oriental and Occidental relationship in the autobiographies of these two writers. So this was a brief outline of my research proposal. Thank you for your patient listening.
Yeah, good, Azhar, that you are focusing on different narratives in Taylor and Kipling. So now the floor is on for the discussion.
Presented well, Azhar. I have a question. Can you brief any Indian writers counter against the accidental narratives on India?
Occidental, yes, sorry, can you once again ask?
Can you brief any Indian writers counter against the accidental narratives on India?
Yeah, many of the major writers have countered this Occidental view. Maybe right now I'm unable to recall, but surely we can find the writings which have countered this Occidental views.
Because from the Western, they have mentioned something about India, but from Indian writers also, they have to counter, right? That is the reason I asked
Yeah.
you.
Yes, see, it's again more of a power relationship was Michel Foucault discusses. So even though we have documents, it is not popular at the international level. Even there may be the writings on the Western countries too, but what matters is the power relations. As he says, Michel Foucault, he says power is knowledge. So we are, I mean, vision of the Indian have like our may be or imperialistic views. Yes.
Is he represented India as negative or positive according to his view from the Western?
Who? Taylor.
Taylor.
Meadows Taylor. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, like say when it comes to Meadows Taylor, he was not only a writer, he was a dynamic personality. He was an administrator, painter, as well as architecture. So looking at his writings, there is a debate because what I have read is he was carrying the views of Occidental. So I have to look into it. Right now, I can't conclude it because still my study is in the process. So I can't conclude that. Yeah, but surely I mean, when I complete my thesis, surely I can answer that.
So let us go to, you have any questions, Siraj and Sowmya?
Azhar, your paper came out well, and I have a question. Can you name any women writers who has concentrated on Occidentalism?
Yes. Sorry, ma'am, I didn't come across that. Yeah. Maybe, yeah, in the process of study, I may come. Yeah.
Okay.
But right now, I didn't. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Siraj?
Hello. Azhar, you have concluded that that Meadows has carried that Occidental views in his writing.
Yes, sir.
You have mentioned part of that. Could you elaborate that? What make you to believe that he was carrying Occidental views?
Yes, sir. Obviously, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, when it comes to his creative writings, he didn't find any publisher in India. First thing is that he was writing to the British audience. And secondly, he was majorly controlled and dominated by the British publishers. For example, Bentley, Richard Bentley, who was very much famous publisher at the period during the period of 19th century. And we all know what were the situations and backgrounds during the 19th century in the British, I mean in the England. So what Bentley said, whatever Bentley said, Taylor had followed that. Okay, when the it and also it was like more of a cultural industry. It was not only I mean, there was no much appreciation for the art, rather for the writing was for the commercialization. So when we say, look at the Confessions of a Thug, so the British audience wanted something, I mean, exotic, which is too far. They wanted to know what's going at far at the distance. So Thagi or the Daketi, which East India Company was publishing through the newspapers and magazines. So this issue was very much highlighted in the 19th century. So what Meadows Taylor did is like, why can't I turn these factual things into a creative writing? So whatever the writers, whatever the publisher said, he has followed that. And coming to his next novel, Tipu Sultan, where he was not at all aware of that Meadows Taylor, because he was in the northern part of Karnataka, and he was totally unaware of the southernmost Karnataka. So because the Richard Bentley, the publisher, insisted him to write on this Tipu Sultan, he has written. So what I feel is like he also followed. But I also mentioned that I am not directly this that concluding that he was carrying the Occidental views. But throughout my survey of literature, what I did till today, I found this. So I am I highlighted that point, but maybe don't know, in the future it may change my view or my argument change on this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from any other participants? Jagadish, do you have any question?
Azhar, in the
Yes,
review,
yes.
what they have found the differences between Indian and external cultures?
Oh, okay, sir. So you are talking about the culture. Yes, obviously. See, when we speak of the culture, obviously this British were in dominant, because again I may take the example of Confession of Thug. So when they saw the culture of Indian, they found it like it is inferior, because they kept their culture as superior, and they also started a ministry called Dakat and Thugism to keep an eye on Indian culture. So they were like more of a suppressing it. Even like East India Company has spent a lot of money on the suppressing the Indian culture. So why? Because it may be a threat for them to administer the country. So this is what I found in my study. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So good, Azhar. Your area is very good.
Yes,
And you are mainly focusing on how this Occidental or trying to look into this Oriental culture and Oriental history. So
Yes,
I'm happy that you are focusing on post-colonial studies to look into this Occidental narratives and Oriental.
yes, sir.
And what are your objective? Can you just brief?
Yes, sir. So one is like how this Occidental narratives have seen our culture. I mean the Oriental culture. And second is to look. To look this Occidental narratives in post-colonial lens. Yes, sir. And to examine the counter narratives on Oriental history. And the lastly is to see how this Occidental and Oriental relationship was. So these
Can you
are
really find
my
the counter narratives between these two writers? Like, so what are the counter narratives you predominantly find in these two writers when they look into India?
yes, sir. Yeah, obviously, like we can find in Taylor, sir, when because he was so much popular that the citizens of India or the nearby citizens called him Mahadev Baba. So he was that popular. So if we look into his, autobiography, he was a caretaker for the king who was underage. I mean, till the year of 18, he has taken care of him. He has given him education so that he can, when at a certain age, he can administer his empire. So if you look at this, and if you look Kipling, there is a lot of contradiction, because Kipling was carrying, like if I quote, if I draw an example, we can take white man's burden. So what I find, these are the two contradictory things I found in these two writers.
Okay, good. So it looks very interesting. Maybe focus on Edward Syed and Guy Spivak and Homi
Yes,
K.
sir.
Baba's writing to
Yes, sir.
understand it in a better way. So with this, we will conclude, Azhar, and it's a very
Thank you,
good
sir.
presentation, Azhar. Keeping
Thank
the time in mind, you have taken almost 15 minutes. So I request next Jagadish is going to present. Are you ready, Jagadish?
Okay, sir. Can I start?
Yeah. So Jagadish is a social science student and he has completed his PhD in economic studies in the same university. And yes, Jagadish, go ahead.
My name is Jagadish. Recently I have submitted PhD and I am pursuing under the guidance of Dr. P.S. Shastha in the Department of Economics, Vijayanagara Krishnadevaraya University, Bellary, Karnataka. My study is to analyze the visual effects of revenue in Karnataka with the help of climatical change. Mainly, my study is intention to find out the climatical impacts of climatical impact on agriculture to identify the marginal effects. The study has observed the significant effects of climate change on agriculture revenue in Karnataka due to Karnataka state has divided into 10 agroclimatic zones, and centrally it was divided 3 agroclimatic zones such as northern, southern and coastal regions of the state. The northeastern part of Kalyana Karnataka region receives annually average of 650 millimeter of rainfall. So it was the second arid region after the Rajasthan in India, and it was known as rain shadow area of Karnataka. The least rainfall was observed in the districts of Chitradurga and overall Kalyana Karnataka region, and Chitradurga districts face the maximum of 43 degrees Celsius to 45 degrees Celsius of temperature. Centrally, the region of coastal region of India almost receives the second highest rainfall across the state, and winter was mild in Bidar districts, followed by coastal region of the Karnataka state. The changes in agriculture revenue happens due to the different reasons, mainly the nature and environment, such as differences in the soil types, changes in land fertility level, and changes in the area of forest cover and availability of water in the region. And another reason is climatical effects, because different agroclimatical effects we can observe across the state, specifically temperature, rainfall, wind speed, wet day frequency, evaporation, and some other things are also happens in the state. These are directly affects on the agriculture productivity. And other things are agronomic effects, such as we can observe the different crop varieties. Those are behaves differently across the region of the state, and farmers' knowledge about cultivation, technology, and implementation of usage of fertilizer and consumption something else. And also the study also observe the changes in the price activities also impact on the revenue of the farmer, like as social causes such as festivals, strikes, lockouts, emergency effects are also increases the price of the agriculture commodity. Also we can observe the political causes such as unstable government can also affect can also cause us to increase in the prices, and even the international relations with the government and implementation of policy and programs also cause us to, and government taking actions to increase the revenue of farmers or causes to changes in the price. Also we can observe the economic reasons such as inflation and deflation, economic crisis, increase in the per capita income, export and import of goods and services, specifically to the agriculture commodities and other related agriculture commodities such as complementary goods and substitute goods, which are also causes to changes in the price of the commodity. These changes in the quality and quantity of crop output at the production side, and also price, taste and preferences are also causes to changes in the price at the consumer side. These are causes to increase the revenue at the final state. So therefore, study has chosen to obtain the each APMC market level daily data of quantity arrivals and prices of the product other than the production of crop, because the production of crops cannot give the actual income of the farmers. Therefore, study has obtained the each APMC market level data directly to explain the benefit of that region or district level farmers crop income across the Karnataka state. The study has taken 16 years data from 2002 to 2017. Majorly the major producing crops of rice, maize, jowar, groundnut, and ragi. These are the main producing crops in Karnataka state, and estimated the revenue function to obtain the actual revenue of the farmers, and it was finally merged into the monthly and district and converted to the district level revenue of the Karnataka state. And study estimated the regression analysis to obtain the marginal impact of climatical effects on agriculture revenue. For that study, in the estimation, study has found the heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation problem that was constant by the new West model using the least square, and estimated the partial elasticities were presented in the parametric values. The impact of climate in the climatic factors, temperature affected 16.33% on the revenue, followed by water deficit, cloud cover, rainfall, frost level have significant positive effect on the crop revenue. Within the climate, evaporation was affected 15.4%, and wet day frequency was affected 1.42%. Exist negative impacts. And in the agronomic variables such as fertilizer consumption affected 3.78%, followed by quality seeds of the crop was affected 0.34%, irrigated area affected 0.43%, 43% are influenced positively, while forest cover was affected negatively 0.55%. Other than that, economic variables of per capita income was affected positively 6.2% in Karnataka state. Finally, study has observed the impacts of climate change. Climate change was very significantly across the space, given the differences in the initial climatic conditions of Karnataka state are vary across the state. In the partial elasticity of across the districts, partial elasticities of across the districts, Uttar Kannada, Shivamogga, and Udupi are affected more than the other districts compared to the other districts of Karnataka state. And mainly the Shivamogga district affected negatively with the by the temperature, and Shivamogga is and by analyzing the total revenue, study has observed the maximum revenue from the region of river basins. The highest revenue of Karnataka state come from the Tungabhadra region, that was mainly from the Raichur, Koppala, Bellary, Dayananda, and Shivamogga. Within and least revenue come from the Chitradurga district, due to Chitradurga district receives the least rainfall over a period, and presently it was observed the less rainfall in the study. Finally, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jagadish, for your presentation on climatic change and agriculture issue. It's a very interesting topic, which even science studies, especially science fiction studies, we have so many fictions which studied the dystopian kind of this flood and over rainfall. So I wish our student will respond to this. Siraj and Raj, any one of you? Yes.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the good presentation, Mr. Jagadish. I want to know, there is a big forest area and hills and valleys in Chitradurga, but the rainfall is so less in the area compared to other districts. What are the climatic impacts on agriculture? How they reduce the revenue of the state in that area, actually?
That's the values I have said, Raju. The climate in the climate was affected specifically in the region of
Changes up and down. I mean,
Raju, your voice is not clear.
Can you repeat the question, Raju?
yes, sir. There is a big forest area, sir, Jogumati, Hussain
Yes.
Valley in the Chitradurga, but rainfall is so less in that area compared to other districts. What are the climatic changes occur in that region, and how they reduce the revenue of the state?
Revenue of the state, reducing the revenue of the state.
Yeah.
Raju, in the Chitradurga district, mainly it was comes under the arid region because of it is also falls under the rain shadow area of India. It is one of the biggest all in the compared to Rajasthan, northeastern districts of Bidar, Kalburgi, Raichur, Yadgiri, Koppala, Bellary, and Chitradurga are the second largest arid regions in Karnataka. Not even in Karnataka, it is also second largest region of the India also. So therefore, the region will the forest area was very small. That the length of the trees was very small, and those are not attracting the rainfall. In the coastal region, we can observe the rain. Bigger forest area and the length of the trees were very high and very high. Even though there is, we can observe the hills; those are stopping the clouds and attract the rainfall. So therefore, we can identify the large rainfall. Even the coastal region get the second highest rainfall in India. This is the effect. The most of all we can get the rainfall and highest rainfall, and through that Tungabhadra region will falls up to the Raichur, and therefore we will observe the highest revenue from the Shivamogga, Davangere, Koppala, Bellary, and Raichur because of highly irrigated region.
But one thing,
Yes.
there is also a big human interference on nature in Chitradurga district. There is a mining, and they applied windmills, so they may also affect on climatic change and agriculture, right? And
Yes,
rainfall. Yeah.
Yes, Raj, it will also account because of changes in the and increase in the GHG emission. It is also affect on the crop production, and even it can increase the heat of the earth.
When you look at the geographical area of the Chitradurga, half of belongs to what is that? Of Malnadu area. Even it
Yes,
gets rain in Vadalkere, Vadadurga, some taluks.
Yes, Raju. But specifically, my study concentrated on rice, maize, groundnut, ragi crops, but in the part of the region of Chitradurga, they will cultivating arca-nuts, but less of these crops, whatever I have selected. So I am explaining the impacts of values of rice, maize, jowar, groundnut, and ragi crops.
Okay, I think we'll. Jagadish has responded well. Like, is there any other queries or contribution from other participants? Either Quadri.
Hello, Jagadish. You have presented.
Maybe you have to brief the question, and also it should be in a brief.
Yes, sir.
Like
Mr. Jagadish, you have concentrated on few crops you have mentioned in your presentation, but I think the using of crops like sugarcane and cotton, which were very popular crops of this area. I think these also, the changing of the crop cultivation may also affects on the revenue of the state. What do you think about this? What's your view?
Yes, I have also calculated the class crop diversification index with the help of crop entropy index. It was also explaining about the diversification of the crops can cause us to increase the revenue of the farmers because of they are diversifying due to their loss in the revenue. So this diversification also affect on the revenue of the farmers. Even in the present situation of Karnataka, most of farmers are diversifying to urbanization. In that period, we cannot we cannot calculate the farmers' revenue. So that data we are not obtaining, even in the government also they are not maintained. So this is a problem. We are not accurately identify what is the effect of diversification in the agriculture.
Yes. So shall we go to next presentation? Either Siraj or Sowmya, do you have any question, queries, or anything to add to adding to the discussion? Yes. Sowmya and Siraj, Azhar.
Yes, sir. We can move to the next participant.
Okay.
Mhm.
So in the next position, see to it, we will contribute everyone. Congratulations, Jagadish. Your area is really good. Working on any issue related to agriculture and farmer is highly respectful one. And I'm very happy that our own studies, science fiction studies, also working on climate change. And there are so many fictions and short stories have been addressed the issue. So looking at the time constraint, I will ask only one question. How can we change this climate change? Can we change the climate change and positively affect on agriculture and farmer life? Because
sir,
nowadays, it's not nowadays, since like so many decades, we have heard farmers are committing suicide just because of they are not getting good crops and they are facing many economic problems. And they go to banks and take loan and commit, especially in Maharashtra region, which is also our northern Karnataka compared to southern Karnataka. As Raju mentioned, Chitradurga has a better forest and all compared to other districts, but still there is a problem in the agriculture. So to brief this, how can we address the issue of climate change and improve the agriculture? Can you brief it in 1 minute?
Sir, as per my view, the farmer should be adapt up to their sales. They even though they will wait for 4 months to get their output, but they can't still wait for only 6 days to sell their product to get their income. But they are directly selling to products to the middlemen, so they are losing their profits. And another thing, they have to adapt, or they have to make their product to marketing. At present, we can observe different choices, different opportunities in the market, but they are losing their hopes. And even though they are not concentrating on the market side, just they are selling their product. So this can help to increase the farmers' revenue. And even government should think about to increase the irrigated area, which is also applicable to the non-irrigated area like as a Chitradurga and northern districts. Even farmers should also adopt the crop mixes like as a forest agriculture. It can generate the by cultivating different fruits, which can give us the each month some other fruit crops will give us the output. They can get the income every month, but they are adopting only single crop, monocropping. They are adopting. This was the problem to farmers, to explain about the things which we have to cultivate and which we do not. So which can generate higher income and which cannot. So that can help to farmers to get the higher income. So I specifically concentrate on to give the training and knowledge about the cultivation, marketing, and something other things which they can help to increase the farmers' incomes. Even we cannot change.
Maybe yes. So
even we cannot change the climate. If we are trying to change the climate by planting the new plants in the forest area, something else, another arid regions, it can also changes the climate of some other region. It indirectly affects
that is a very important suggestion. We focus on more into develop our forest. So deforestation is resulting very badly now. So in a recent past, some of our government officials and politicians visited the Israel and China, how they are doing agriculture in a better way. So we can also study those model, how best, because Israel is a very small country, and even some of the countries like Dubai and all, though they don't have proper agricultural land, some part of them are doing best in agriculture. Maybe you can study those models and apply. And I'm very thankful, Jagadish, to come to our conference and contribute your research. I hope your research is going to be useful for the government in the policy level. All the best. So now I request, I request Rajanna B to present his paper. And Rajanna, since looking at the time constriction, you can present 10 minutes. So yes, all the best.
Thank you,
So as
sir.
usual, after the presentation, I request all of you to contribute. Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, respected Chairperson of this session and all the delegates. I am Rajanna B, Doctoral Researcher under the guidance of Dr. Santhosh, Assistant Professor, Department of Studies in English, Vijayanagara, Krishnadevaraya University, Bellary. I am doing research entitled Human Interference and Ecological Catastrophe in the Select Works of J.G. Ballard. Now I want to speak about the present paper. The study of dystopia is an important genre in literature to focus on the ongoing issues in people and the environment. James Stuart Mill has introduced the term dystopia in a parliamentary debate in 1868. After that, several literary writers have followed to describe about the bad and imperfect world is imbalanced by the impact of science and technology. In the world, people and environment undergo many problems every day. Nature also suffers from the various issues by the interference of humans. He has established science and technology in order to fulfill his wishes, but that collapses the natural environment rapidly. Extract several resources for food, construction, urbanization, and to make chemicals and fertilizers, but its impacts on human and non-human beings too. Predominantly, natural environment faces many difficulties by this intrusion. When it comes to literature, there are several writers have been discussed about the dystopia and ecology in their works, such as George Orwell's 1984, Animal Farm, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, and Mad Atom trilogy, Cormac McCarthy's The Road, Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games, Udane Diamant's Tree, James Dashner's The Maze Runner, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, Jack London's The Iron Heel, and Anthony Burgess' A Clark Work Arranged, etc. In the contemporary world, there is a big crisis that happens by the development of technology, which consumes more resources to produce materials, and it also creates heavy pollution and discomfort for many living creatures, including human beings. Especially after the rapid growth of technological phenomena, several cities begin to face the problems of global warming, pollution, dirty nature, and lack of resources. For this reason, the study undertakes to examine the topic entitled Technological Development, Crisis, and Cityscape in J.G. Ballard's High Rise. Because High Rise is one of the technotopian and dystopian novels, it is part of the second quartet group of novels. High Rise, Concrete Island, Atrocity Exhibition, and Crash depict the technological and scientific imbalances in the cityscape. The novel High Rise is a better example of skyscrapers, super technology, overpopulation, and modern apocalypse in the single building called as High Rise. They built residences for themselves, but they could not live according to fish in the apartment due to heavy pollution of sound, rotten things, and water leakages. The present article examines the impact of urbanization, science, and technology. The single building has 2,000 tenants who face the several difficulties. There is no proper electricity. Most of the time, elevators get repaired and they struggle to move in the stairways. The large crowd comes in the same situation and they do acoustic war. Even on another side, fruits and vegetables have been collapsed with the bad condition of refrigerators. Many of the time, gas explosion in the kitchen rooms and fire in the corridors distract the ambience of the residents. The heavy crowd worry for the crisis happened inside of the building. Even they leave rotten vegetables, corpses of animals and human beings. It is also set in the dark condition of the apartment. They create filthy atmosphere with the lack of water. Therefore, the protagonist Robert Lang is exhausted with sound pollution and waste materials inside of the building. Whenever he comes to the apartment at daylight after completing his duty in the office with several tensions. He is also fed up with dirty nature created by other tenants, and rest of them also suffer from the same issue in the high rise. In the outside of the building, many construction projects arise and collapse the natural environment around them. People lose peace inside and outside of their living area. Get arboreal furniture and cloth. Moreover, they kill pet animals to eat meat when they could not able to find the food, and leave corpses of human beings in the apartment due to overpopulation in the residence. Tenants stuck in the stairways and elevators. So the main objective of the article is to illustrate the effect of modern housing construction and more population in the building due to the technological errors and mundane of life. Though they have built in order to access many facilities, but they are fed up with the food crisis, which causes them to have meat of pet animals, including human beings, after their death. J.G. Ballard observed that world will end with human interference and ecological catastrophe because he establishes more industrial companies and urbanization by destroying the natural environment. The main reason is scientific inventions of science and technology. These require many resources to produce. Hence, human extract several things from the earth. He builds housing complexes to live happily, but that reflects him not to live peacefully. Thus, the article finds out dystopian atmosphere in the high-rise building by encompassing super technology. It also reveals that the rapid growth of urbanization impacts on natural environment and makes people to stay in particular cities. Finally, the dirty nature creates a great trauma for living beings around the area. The novel is written in 1975 that deals with futuristic elements of science and technology regarding the modern lifestyle of human beings. The writer J.G. Ballard senses that human could not live without resource of natural environment, but when he is stuck with the predicaments in their living area, he comes to know that he does activity against the law of nature. So the same situations happens with the high-rise residents in London during post-modern era because he has experienced critical condition of natural environment and people at the time of World War II in Shanghai, China. People of the city are scared by the impact of war apocalypse. The warriors use nuclear to collapse the other country people and their buildings. This incident influences him to become a great post-war writer of England. He tries to depict only the natural disasters and human interference by the activity of developing science destroying the environment. Thank you all.
Yes, Raju, good. You focused mainly on science fiction. And now I request other participants to respond to Raju, then we can go ahead.
Yes, Rajanna, it was a good presentation, but I have a couple of questions to you. One is like when you speak of the genre dystopian, you have mentioned almost the Western writers, but I would like to know you any writer from India, because India had witnessed the Bhopal gas tragedy. So any writer from our country, that is the one thing. And second thing is, can the human live without interference into the nature? So these are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Azhar, your kind question. From India, Amita Ghosh, Dr. Arun Joshi, and Anita Desai, and Kiran Desai, Babini Chattopadhyay, and there are many writers who focus on dystopia. Dystopia is nothing but by the impact of technology and science and technology on cityscapes as well as provincial areas too. We use mobiles and many technological things around us. Before human was living with nature, especially in forest area, but now we live in constructed buildings. How I presented a paper, how I am presenting a paper in a particular classroom. So it is not related to your question, but already I countered that question, how the writers focus. And you asked something different. Can we live without human intervention, right?
Yeah, that was my question. Yeah.
But compared to ancestors' time, they can live without interference of human. But now interference should be there. It should be there because they have to produce more materials for every human being, because population is much more compared to previous days. That is the reason. But it collapses in the natural environment. But it is necessary to interfere. Human interference should be on nature.
Thank you. Thank you.
Raju.
Yes, Sowmya.
Well, I have a question, Raju. Is the real estate is affecting forest or your this thing? That's why.
Actually, I was expecting this question. Exactly right, madam. Real estate is the biggest problem. I mean, one of the biggest problems in this human interference on cityscapes. See, developing the city, we enlarge the area of the length of cities. For example, I am living in Bellary. This Bellary extends that area of living length. People get the real estate. I mean, that space of outskirts of the city. So it rightly impacts on climatic and as well as it collapses the jungles around the cities, madam.
Thank you, Raju.
Even landscape. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, Raju.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have very well responded, Azhar and Sowmya.
Yes,
I would like to add few things here with concern to both their questions.
Yes,
Okay, the human interference, without human interference in the nature cannot live. It is my perception. But when we study about the ecology or eco-criticism, there is a study called a deep ecology, which has the two aspects. One is the deep ecology and another is the shallow ecology. Both are the contrary perceptions. Among them, the shallow ecology, which studies about that we can live by sustaining of the environment by making the planned civilization without making the unnecessary expansion of the city life or whatever. We can make the limit of our interferences into the nature. In this way, we can live. It is a study of shallow ecology. Okay, what do you say? What is your opinion about this?
Now we are in Zoom meeting. It is also kind of technology. It impacts on birds and actually on birds and some other animals also. This network condition. See, if you want to speak with your any relatives or your beloveds, you have to use mobile. And if you want to lit a fire and get something in boiled things, you have to go with the fire. I mean, you have to lit a fire. That also impacts on nature.
Yes.
You can get only the raw materials to have food, like any. Now you are having purified water. That is also kind of technology. If you want to live in good weather and good environment, you have to come out from all these super technologies now. And you should be in the jungle only, and you have to create your own culture, and you have to live under the, I mean, beneath the trees, and you have to live in a bank of lake. But you can't live in a cityscape. That is the reason. Cityscape or any provincial area. But we have to adjust with the nature. Already it was existed with ancestors, but now it is covered all things with human beings. Human can't live without technology or some scientific inventions, what I feel. And you said deep ecology. Yeah, of course, J.G. Ballard also focuses on deep ecology. He explored something about deep ecology. In order to highlight the deep ecology only, he wrote many books. like high rise. High rise focuses on super technology, but indirectly it gives message.
Yes,
Not
Raju, you have responded well to three of them. Maybe Jagadish can ask question to the next presenter, looking at the time constraint. And I may respond to you at once you all presented. Like our presentation is planned for 1 hour. Actually, we are almost reaching 2 hours. So I now request Sowmya to present our paper. Followed it after that, Siraj will present. Thank you, Raju. It's a very good presentation, and you responded really well. Go ahead, Sowmya, now.
Good morning, sir. Who is chairing this session? And myself, I'm Sowmya. I'm a research scholar, and I'm pursuing my PhD under the supervision of Dr. Santhosh K. He's the assistant professor of English at Vijayanagara Krishnadevaraya University, and I'm also pursuing my PhD in the same university. So now I would like to present a paper on my selected topic, narrating self, understanding feminism of the subaltern in the selected Dalit writings. So even today we are suffering this caste system. Dalit literature is one of the most important literary movement to emerge in the post-independence in India. India is one of the quickest developing nation on the planet, yet it is famous for its unbending caste system. Dalit writings in India problematized dislodged social authentic space of underestimated essential clarification of individuals have a place with caste within Hindu society of India. Dalit movement just as a pondering on upper caste society through Dalit literature by writers and mastermind of furthermore by executions of welfare plots by government, a positive approach towards fairness is found in social life of Dalit people group these days. My thesis examines Dalit women's life world under double patriarchy, challenging, negotiating, politicizing, and transforming condition of their discriminated Dalit status for being Dalit women. I focus on understanding feminism in subalterns on a varieties of things like gender and a new Dalit woman in patriarchal society, upper caste prejudice, community, discrimination, and formal education to illuminate the changing society of complexity of Dalit women. I would like to demonstrate the difference perspective of Dalit writing over the past 4 decades and the contemporary Dalit women's writers. Dalit women writers have been more sensitive to the complexity of Dalit women's experience than historians who have traditionally relied disproportionately upon the objectivity archives produced by the post-colonial state. Shantabai Kamble considered and Bebitai Kamle's work considered was one of the first Dalit work in India. And Dalit women writers have been more sensitive to the complexity of Dalit women's experiences than historians who have traditionally relied disappropriately upon the objectivity archives produced of the post-colonial state. Shantabai Kamble considered, I already said that she's one of the first Dalit woman writer, and her ideas, woman's idea, action, and lives in the 20th century in Maharashtra. Some Dalit women writers, Dalit resistance to both colonial and Brahmanical hegemonic and the power and their quest for their own modernity. Their focus is little study of how women fought against patriarchy, both private and public. I would like to focus on how Dalit self-narrating means autobiographies, how they interpret the subalterns in their narrative in selected Dalit women's writings. Although there are a few fragmentary evidence, unlike upper caste elite women, Dalit women did not extensively write for the published during the colonial period. Hence, we have to understand their views and lives through the vision and ideas of male reformers who wrote regularly for printed newspaper and periodical started by Dalits. However, in post-colonial times, many Dalit women have expressed and published their ideas and lives histories are important, especially given the lack of empirical and official history source on Dalit. They have encountered many silence through writing. As Ranjit Guha's contended, I quote, politics of the general population is forgotten in this unhistorical historiography. The parallel independent area of subaltern caste and gathering distorted or deleted under the overall tip-top space of historiography. I unquote. India is a cultural diversity that distinguish ethnicity, concerned religion and caste. Yet since colonial time, political impulses, cultural authority and domain have been forcing fractured and breaking down the school of thought as the mode of guidance, training, the teacher's method of language, guidance, changes, and repeated respect to the upper caste and Dalits. Etymologically, the term Dalit has started from Sanskrit. Dalit signifies abused. Dalit actually signifies persecuted. It is utilized as an equivalent word for unapproachable. It likewise alludes to casteless area of India. Dalit is likewise forgotten outcast. It is a self-assigned for the gathering of individual traditionally viewed as untouchable, traditionally viewed as untouchables. Dalits are blended populations of different caste gathering living all over India. There are a few distinct names used to categorize the gathering like Harijan, meaning children of God. Dalit signifies broken people. Dalit movement started in Maharashtra, a significant state in the reconstruction of Dalit or in the change of distance to touchables. A few movements by Dalit pioneer, both in the abroad and in the India, were done by the Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela in South Africa, whose penance and commitment have turned into noteworthy sources of motivation for the people group of globe. Gautam Sahu Maharaj and R. Sinde and Baba Saheb Ambedkar were the noticeable social reformer of Maharashtra. I phrased open the gap that how Dalit women's fragmented, fraud, complex and contradictory lives can be confined to reading. We need to pay attention to the deeper complexity of Dalit women's subjectivities as both victims and the transitive agent.
Sowmya, you may be brief in 2 minutes, like what you are going to say, or what are your major arguments you wanted to bring in. So can you brief so that, yeah.
As I have read till now, my research gap is, and the research find the gap that there are less research work have explored on narrating self. Many research work have been done on women autobiography and even plenty of materials and research done. But the topic that have chosen for research narrating self-understanding feminism in subaltern on selected Dalit women's writing, analyzing which are not emphasized by the researchers. I have chosen 6 Dalit women's writers, namely Babitai Kamle's The Prison We Broke, Urmila Pawar's The Weave of My Life, and Bama's Karuku and Sangati, Gogu Shamala's Father Maybe and Big Elephant, Mother is a Big Basket, but Yashika that's coming out as Dalit, and Meena Deshpande's When I Hit You. So narrating self is a new concept to research area. these writers are not contemporaries. Their social concept differs to writers to writers. In 90s, 80s, Babita Kamle's represent her own perception, and in 2019, Yashika Dutt's and Meena Kandaswamy's writings are different than comparatively different to Babita Kamle's and Urmila Pava's. But I want to bring out that difference, and also I want to appreciate the writers' the greatness of writing, how they write the narratives and like that. My objective is to understand the problem of Dalit women, to focus on the caste analyzation and the issues of women, to appreciate the author's sense of writing self, to evaluate the gender discrimination. So I will come out with a different opinion as I read further, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this good opportunity for everyone. Thank you, sir.
Yes, good, Sowmya. I congratulate you for this such a good paper. Now I request other participant to respond to her in 1 or 2 questions. I can take only 1 or 2 responses. Yes.
Okay, hello Sowmya. Thank you for your well presentation. You have used the word double patriarchy. Could you signify that word? What the significance made you to use that word double patriarchy?
Sir, being a Dalit woman is one part, because she suffers there also with her maybe her husband, her son, or other male dominated society in her world, in her community. That is one kind of discrimination she has. And also when she come out of the community, she used to abuse by the upper caste domination also. So like this, she used to suffer within the community and outside the community. That's why I have written double patriarchal, means doubly victimized, like that I have portrayed, sir.
Okay.
You presented well, madam. As you rightly said, I also read the Babitai Kamle's novel, The Prisons We Broke. It explores about the double muted from patriarch, I mean, outside and inside of the family. Now I have a question. Is the Dalit literature found social justice to lower caste men and women in public as well as domestic space? Because many Dalit women have been sexually assaulted by own and other communities. What you give the justice about this?
The society should give justice to one who has victimized, because I know that being a Dalit woman is such a means for them it is a good part, but comparatively assaultion and rapes are going outside and inside the families. But what is their position? Where do they get justice? Society should give justice and people should show concern. What type of concern they want? They're coming out through their narratives. Now they're coming out through their writings. Till that we are not coming. Most of the writers, they were not coming out and they were not saying writing their narratives. Now they are started right to this genre, and let us see whether this writings may affect peoples, and the upper caste society means upper caste society means I'm not talking about one who dominates, one who shows concern, means government should show concern and they give justice. Even our constitution has given much more standards to Dalit women now, but they are not like that now at the present time. But in coming days, we can hope for the best societal decisions.
Madam, though it is a science fiction conference, what you want to suggest media to represent the problems of Dalits?
Sir, nowadays Dalit writers and they have a platform now. They are coming out to the social medias. Now they have WhatsApp group. It means science means technology. It is they're coming out. They have forums, discussion forums in Facebook pages, live pages like Caravan, like Facebook.
Sowmya, you mean how science and technology is also helping them
Yes, sir.
to
Yes,
come out
yes,
with
sir.
their problems,
Nowadays,
with their solutions. Okay.
yeah, okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
Sowmya, good. I think you can also respond, Raju and Siraj, later. Maybe you
okay.
can make one more meeting since you're all
Okay.
friends.
Okay, sir.
Good that you focused on another genre, important field of literature, Dalit literature. Now I request Syed Sirajuddin Qadri to go ahead with this presentation. And he has been working on Kannada studies, like especially Green literature. He's comparing Tejasvi and Sri Krishnalnali, very prominent Kannada writer who predominantly writes during Kannada modern period, which we call it as Navya movement. I think this is a brief. And he is also working as assistant professor in a college, in a degree college in Vijayapura. Welcome to you, Siraj. Go ahead.
Hello, hello everybody. Sir has already introduced me, then no need to be introduced myself here. Today's my presentation is on wildlife and human exploration, an adventurous journey into a forest in KP Purnachandra Tejasvi's Carvalho. Carvalho is one of the prominent and popular novel of Tejasvi, which was written in 1980. Here in this paper, the paper explores the wildlife and human exploration in the forest through scientific adventure of a scientist, Carvalho, in the western Ghats of the Karnataka. Purnachandra Tejasvi was a prominent figure in the modern literature, Kannada literature. Many of novels have been translated into English. Carvalho is one among them. Here the novel Carvalho is an eponymous novel where the protagonist is a scientist, Carvalho, who goes in search of an extinct flying lizard and eventually finds it, but unfortunately he intended to capture, but unfortunately he fails to capture it alive. Throughout the journey, the author narrates the human culture and their relationship with the wildlife. He focuses on how humans are exploiting the wildlife in order to fulfill their desires. This paper also discusses the evolution of the extinct extinct lizards and compares it with other creatures. Actually, the novel can be divided into two parts. One is the before excursion into the forest, and second is the during excursion into the forest. Here, my focus is on the second part of the novel. Here, Carvalho, the scientist adventures, the scientific adventure also reveals the myth of wildlife and folk life in the forest. The first half of the novel discloses the pastoral life of South Indians and their culture. Then the narration takes to the wildlife. Besides a novelist, Tejasvi was an ornithologist, naturalist, atheist, realist, who was influenced by the Lohiya's philosophy, which can reveals through his writing here. He was much enthusiastic towards the external environment and tries to explore the truth in the nature. His description captured the reader's heart because of the authenticity and peculiarity of his writing. The narrator describes about honeybees, the breeding system, their nature, etc. Even the minute things from the nature. He looks the brighter side of these bees. Carvalho said they have developed the immunity by being frequently bitten by the bees. The expedition explores the many myths of the wildlife. It's a naturalist. As a naturalist, he goes on in search of the truth. The narrator went to Carvalho's research center to find the solution for the pests in his crop. The simple suggestion of the scientist to drain the water from the crops and which brings the joy for narrator, and they became the good friends. The narrator, influenced with the Carvalho's lecture and interest in science, encouraged to accompany him to the expedition. During the expedition, there were many characters. Among them, Mandana is a special character whose contribution is lot here during the expedition. Mandana is an idiot, but Carvalho finds him a born naturalist who helps him extraordinarily. Carvalho disappoints when Mandana asks for the job of an attender in his office or his research center, because Carvalho considers him as a born scientist, and the difference between him and the Mandana is the only designation which Carvalho had. He helps to explore Mandana helps to explore the glowworms and flying lizard projects to Carvalho, which was very much important for Carvalho with the perspective of his research. Mandana's keen observation on flora and fauna made him the best companion and inevitable fellow for Carvalho and narrator. They submit surety. Carvalho and the narrator submit the surety to the police, and they were arranged to a lawyer to bail the Mandana when he was arrested in a toddy case. He finds the lizard. Mandana finds the lizard on the tree when the red ants fell down from it. Actually, it was very difficult to find a small insect or a small wildlife into the thick forest of the Western Ghats. But Mandana says his genius helps them to find the flying lizard in the dense forest. He describes how the glowworms eat the honeybees. He also knows the topography of the forest, which helps a lot to the narrator and other fellows to take this expedition. When we come to the narrator himself, the Purchandra Tejasvi, his distinct narrative technique lure the readers. The trees, mountains, and the landscape are described fantastically in this novel. He explores the men who exploit others for greed, the corrupt forest officials who allow to cut the huge trees, and they use the tribal women for their sexual pleasures. He also explores the characters like Venkat, who compromises with the situation for mutual benefits and sends her wife with the officers. Venkat deceives the people with the false story like a snake stone, etc., and kills the snakes, otter mongoose dexterously and mercilessly. He explores Carvalho, He explores the characters like Carvalho, Karyappa, Mandana, even Kiwi the dog, and even honeybees. Narrator acknowledges with the natural elements with the scientific reasons. Sick Kiwi was taken to the vet, and a right diagnosis has been taken place there. The Carvalho is a scientist who is doing PhD in the foreign university, takes the project on flying lizard. He was shocked on hearing glowworm and flying lizard from Mandana. He has seen the extinct lizard in the British Zoological Museum with the permission of the government. But when we heard the flying lizard from the Mandana, he was shocked, and he was very much eager to see that alive flying lizard in his hand. He describes the natural reasons for the extinct of any species. There was a discussion in the end of the novel or during the excursion that existence about the God, then evolution of the human being and evolution of other species. And there was a question raised by the narrator to the readers that if the monkey becomes the biopet, then why chimpanzees and other belongs to the ape does is still their in own original position, and even the lizard, the flying lizard, cannot change it even after the million years. Such kind of questions can be only settled or answered by the pondering, by the scientific research itself. This is the one of the main mottos of this novel. And then at last, Henry James says that a novelist should combine in himself the qualities of a photographer and a philosopher, same as. When we apply this quote to Tejasvi as a novelist combines himself the qualities of a photographer and a scientist. A photographer tries to capture the minute details of the external world around him. Hence, the Tejasvi tried his best to brought the minute details from the wildlife of the Western Ghat in his novel. This much I have tried to present to you. Thank you one and all. Now the session is for questions.
Yes. Good, Siraj. You have presented very systematically the clarity of your thoughts. Also, the flow is really excellent. I wish you will continue the same research in future. So rather than concluding this, I request, yes, other participant to contribute your views on his presentations. Yes.
You presented well, sir. Actually, your topic is so interesting. You could also focus on that. And I have a question. Did Purnachandra Tejasvi completely depend on deep ecology, or he only wrote novels in order to highlight the nature? How could you define him as a naturalist?
Actually, he was a naturalist, and he was influenced with Lohia's philosophy. Then, after his education, he did not choose a profession as a professor. Instead of that one, he chose his profession as a farmer. It implies that how much he was loves the nature. Hence, most of his novels explores two things. One is nature. Second thing is scientific reasons. Scientific reasons for whatever happens around us. These two things can be seen here. Hence, of course, he is a naturalist. He has written on nature, but there was no clear idea what we have today on that time. Though he brought the he brought the attention of the government, he brought the attention of the readers, common people towards the sustenance and towards the protection of the nature. Okay, in so many ways. Even his Jugari Cross, it is a novel where is also he told about the deep ecology and that ecocide also. Okay, ecocide is a field of ecology where just like environment is tortured by the human being, especially by the human being for their fulfillment of their desires. Okay, in this way, his other scientific and travelogues, where he has explored two things. One is the science or the scientific reasons. The second is his essence of environment or love of environment explored through his writing.
Thank
Hope
you,
that
sir.
I have answered.
Yeah.
Others, if you have any serious question, you can just ask. Yes.
Your paper came out well, sir. And do you think Purnachandra Tejasvi sir is a scientist?
No. Okay, he is not a scientist, but still the love for science or the thinking of his towards whatever may be. Okay, even in this novel Carvalho, there was a discussion about the existence of God. Okay, the answer for that is that we have to think over that. The mystery is only revealed after the research. It means that he was an atheist, but he was not a scientist. But he thinks like a scientist. Okay, whatever we want to know from this nature, we should be ponder there. Okay, the pondering is an essential element of a human growth.
I'm sure this conference will open a new path and a new way to conduct the conference. I don't think so. apart from this film industry, nobody thought to record and display in the conference. So Professor Narahari sir is always unique, and he is the head of the organization, and people have a double standard, but Professor Narahari, he has maintained same, like he has contributed well in the field, and he focused only on science fiction, and he himself is thinking and acting scientifically. That is very important. Like Siraj also was talking about Tejaswini. Tejaswini also lived what he has written. In Kannada, there is a Kruti and our Jivana. They should be same. So I'm very happy to be part of this conference, to join the good hand like Professor Narahari. I should be very thankful. And each one of you presented well. And I'm glad Jagadish also joined our conference, though he is not from literature background, which I was really skeptic how they're going to contribute. But his presentation is an example how research is very much interdisciplinary. Research is very interdisciplinary. And our field, especially science fiction studies or science, is very much interdisciplinary. So people, asked me, how you people do research on science? And when I talking about, I'm working on memory and how people, memory is related to psychology and medical science. So these are the questions usually asked by general readers or other discipline researcher. So this conference is a platform to answer all those concerns. Coming back to your presentation, and very importantly, you need to focus more on a review of literature. Of course, you have summarized it well. When it comes to theorize, I request all the presenters to focus more on existed sources because we are doing research. So research also means we have to research what is already existed. Then it helps us to, come to a focal point. That is our main argument or more concern. Otherwise, somewhere we fail to come to the conclusion, which is very important. Maybe science fiction is very much needy now. It's more contextual compared to, like, if you look at the crisis in Russia and Ukraine war, and if both the presidents are conscious about the destruction of nature, I think you look your day to day, you must have watched how they are collapsing not only human being with the nature also. So if both the presidents are sensible and if they are aware of this reading of science fiction, I think there is no war in Ukraine and Russia. Otherwise, they not only lost the life, they also killed animals and forest. So what I'm trying to say is our research should respond to the contemporary issues. It may be social issue or economical issue or social issues. So like in the day-to-day news, we heard about snowfall, soil erosion, or else flood. So these problems can be addressed in our research, whether you are a science student, art student, or medical student. So at the end of the day, we should concern about society. We should concern about nature. So I'm glad each one of you, from Jagadish to agricultural and agricultural change and climate impact or climate change, to Raju, who's exclusively work on science fiction, city space and I-Rise, to Kadri, he especially talked about Tejasvi's work and Azhar. So all five of you really contributed well. And for me, it's a learning lesson, my dear students, and my dear presenters. So let us not take much time. Science fiction is not a new genre, but it's still in our Indian discipline to our young university like our Vijayanagara Sri Krishnadevaraya University. And we have just begun here. Hope will also be one of the centers responding to this field very well. So I wish you all should be member of this organization. And once again, I'm thankful to the organizers and also my dear professor who is also friend, philosopher and guru, Professor Narahari sir, and who also assisted to conduct this program, Mr. Dayananda, and my own student, Hanumanta, who has come to help me this conference. So this is a wonderful platform for us. Hope we will carry forward the same spirit in the coming academic days, and especially let us be member of this and contribute something in the field, because this is the field which need to be explored, because we only speak about other issue. We have forgotten about nature and science. So without science, there is no life. So with this small conclusion, thank you very much, my dear student, and good luck for your research. All the best.
Good day, all dignitaries, professors, scholars, and science fiction writers. I'm really glad to be a part of 21st Annual 6th International Science Fiction Conference. At first, I want to express my gratitude to Indian Association for Science Fiction Studies, Bangalore, for organizing, and all the collaborative organizations for such a wonderful conference like every year. I wish them all the best throughout the year. I am the founder, publisher, and editor of Kalpabiswa magazine and Kalpabiswa publication. We work in Bengali science fiction, or which we call Kalpabigyan, and today my topic of discussion is it's a review of science fiction works translated into Bengali language. So before we go to the translation part of my lecture, let's just discuss a bit about the Bengali science fiction or Kalpabigyan. Uh, most of you will be surprised to know that Bengali science fiction is almost more than 180 years of old, and the first written example of proto-Bengali science fiction is around 1835. It was published in Calcutta Literary Gazette, and it was written by Kailash Chandra Datta, who wrote a story called A Journal of 48 Hours of the year 1945, which is kind of an alternate history story where the students of Hindu College organized a fight against British Raj. So he wrote this story in when he was only 18 years old, and it was published as first in a Hindu College magazine. Later, one of his relative, which is who is Shoshi Chandra Datta, he wrote in 1845 Republic of Odisha, a page from Annals of 20th Century. So it was also an alternate history story where he showed that in 1916, Odisha, the state of Odisha, they fought against British, and so they are both kind of patriotic stories of alternate history, and they can be called proto science fiction, though they are been written in English, not in Bengali, but they have been written by Bengali students of Bengali authors. So later, Bhudev Mukhopadhyay, he wrote a story, again a story of alternate history, is 1857. It was called Onguriyo Binimoy. So in this story, he shows that Hindu Shivaji, he was in consort with Muslim princess Jahanara, and it was a love story. So it was also a new kind of story at that time, and later we know that this is an alternate history. So later, Himlal Datta, he wrote at 1882 a story called Rahasya. It was about it was a story about a Bengali upper class person. He went to England and he actually visited a friend who is an engineer in his house, and that house is kind of automated, and that experience of that Bengali person in that house is the actual part of the story. So it was kind of a science fiction, because there are lots of futuristic gadgets explained and described in the story. So later, when we came near the end of the era, there was two person who actually wrote real science fiction, the kind of science fiction we used to know these days. One is Jagadish Rai. He wrote in 1895. He wrote a story called Shukra Brahman. So there is a story where he two or three people, two friends, they went to planet Shukra, and they actually contacted by different kind of civilizations. They describe, they show this different plant and animals, and it was very scientific. So kind of it was actually predates War of the Worlds. So even before H. Wells, one of the Bengalis, they wrote something about aliens and those kind of stuffs. So, and the 1 year after, 1896, Jagadish Chandra Bose, he wrote a famous story, Niruddesher Kahini, and that story is later published in Polatak Tufan. It is about a story about a a person who went to a sea voyage, and he took a bottle of special oil for his hair loss. And when there is a big typhoon coming up, and the ship was almost sunk, and he used that hair oil on the sea to subdue the typhoon. So that's the came the name Niruddesha Kahini. So the sub typhoon is it was gone away. So that's considered, these two stories considered as the first science fiction, first proper science fiction in Bengali literature, and those are written in 1895 and 96. But that's enough for that. And now let's come for the translated Bengali science fiction in Bengali literature. So now we'll go to the translation of Bengali science fiction, or translation in Bengali science fiction, I must say. So we all know that while people in India are writing science fiction in 18th century, but it was actually Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and all those people there. They were writing lots of science fiction in the West, and those science fiction came to Bengal through translation. And people or Bengali writers, they were inspired to write science fiction from those translations. So let's see that what kind of translation was done by Bengali translators in early 19th century. So in 1913, Rajendra Acharya, he did lots of translation of Jules Verne. He did Around the World in 80 Days, 5 Weeks in a Balloon, or Journey to the Moon, or this kind of stories. And he wrote those from 1913 to 1924. And later wrote a parody of Professor Challenger. Challenger was by Arthur Conan Doyle's a very famous character. So he wrote a parody of Professor Challenger as Heshoram Bhushiar Diary. That's not a translation, but still it's a parody, and is very, very much inspired from Challenger in 1923. So another one, Kuladaranjan Rai, he was a relative of Satyajit Ray. He was translating in, at that time, he was translating in a magazine called Shandesh. Shandesh is a very famous magazine in Bengal. It was a children's magazine, and it was run by the line of Satyajit Ray's. So in 1930, he translated Mysterious Island, and then he also translated Lost World. So these two books were very, very famous in Bengal that time. Again, during that time came Hemendra Kumar Rai. Hemendra Kumar Rai was a very, very prolific writer. He wrote so many adventure stories, crime stories, horror stories, even science fictions. But he actually inspired from lots of Western authors, and he wrote stories like Megduter Morte Agomon or Moinabati Mayakanan. Those are very, very similar to, not I shouldn't say similar, they are also inspired from War of the Worlds, H. Wells's War of the Worlds and Doyle's Lost World. And also Hemendra Kumar Rai wrote Odrisho Manosh, Manav Danav, Manusher Gora Doito. Those are Wells' Invisible Man, Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's Bengali translation, not translation, is Bengali adaptations. So most of these type of stories, they're adaptation, not translations, because they change the names, they change the place of the story, and they change the characters, and sometimes they change the plot a little bit. So they are kind of adaptations. So uh, it is a scholar said that when Jagadananda Rai started the science fiction type of stories, but that kind of movement, science fiction movement, it is carried on by Hemendra Kumar Rai, and then later Premendra Mitto and Adish Vardhan, though they came and they actually established the genre in Bengali literature. So later, Premendra Mitro, he is also a very famous Bengali science fiction author, or Bengali mainstream author itself. So he wrote some stories who are also inspired, like Pipre Puran, which is inspired by H. Wells's Empire of the Ants. So later, during 50s, Amiya Kumar Chakraborty, he and Nirmal Chandra Gangopadhyay, Sunil Kumar Gangopadhyay, they all translated lots of stories by H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. So that's the initial, you can say, that pre-independent part of science fiction translation in Bengal. So in 1963, Deshbatan started the magazine Ashcharya. So Ashcharya brings a lot of things together in Bengali science fictions genre, because they started writing original science fictions. They started translating science fictions, and translate not only from the stories, they translate from the movie scripts. Just as example, from Dr. Strange Love, uh, Gurnik Singh, he translated Dr. Strange Love's original script as Proloy Ketu Nidra Bhangu. And it is also published as a book from Alpha Beta Science Fiction, which was by Adish Vardhan. And at that time, Monoranjan, they translated Tarzan, Star Wars, or H. Wells, a lot of things, and they have been published from Alpha Beta Science Fiction. So Audrich that time translated all of the Jules Verne's work. That time Gurnik Shim translated Bradbury, Ashok Kumar Saha translated Arthur C. Clarke, Gauri Shankar they translate Bradbury and Asimov. Uh, Ronin Ghosh translated Arthur C. Clarke, Sridhar Senapati translated Frederick Brown, Lawrence Block, and this kind of things are that time was happening. People are translating lots of Western science fictions. So after Ashcharya closed down, Ronin Ghosh started Vishwa Science Fiction, another magazine. There, Amitananda Das, Niranjan Singh, Anish Dev, they translated a lot of things. So, meanwhile, Adish Vardhan completed his translation of Jules Verne and he published it as Jules Verne Rachanavali. That's the complete work of Jules Verne from Bengal publishers. Later, lot of other people, other translators, they translate Jules Verne. Jules Verne is a very favorite author in Bengal, you can say. So Nantu Gangopadhyay, Debashish Chaki, Nitai Boshu, Manovendra Bandyopadhyay, they all translate Jules Verne. Maybe some other people also. So Adish Bhattan not only translated Jules Verne, he translated lots of Wells and Lovecraft also. So also he translated Professor Challenger by all of the Professor Challenger story by Conan Doyle. So after 75, Adish Bhattan came back with his new magazine Fantastic, and again they started translating lots of stories. Just to tell you some name, Adish translated Philip K. Dick, Arthur C. Clarke, uh, Amitananda Das translate Isaac Asimov by Jupiter, uh, Niranjan Singh translate Kal Ratri, Isaac Asimov, Ronan Ghosh translate Incredible Melting Man, and even Satyajit Ray that time he translated lots of stories. Some of the famous stories are Blue John Gawber and Bibhishika is a Conan Doyle story, and apart from that he translated Bradbury's Mars is Heaven and Arthur C. Clarke's 9 Million Names of God. So at that time, some other big publishing house, they also translate a lot of science fiction stories, which are kind of classics. Like Devshayita Kutir translates Whales, Sleeper Wakes, Time Machine, Invisible Man. Meanwhile, there was a Raduka publication, which is a Soviet Union's publication for Bengali, and they translate some Soviet science fiction, Russian science fiction that time. Alexander Beloyev's Ubhachar Manush, Noni Vhomik translated it. Grohantarar Agantuk, uh, again translated by Noni Vhomik. Garin's Detre, Gariner Maran Roshi, translated by Urun Shom. Those are the some names, few of the names. So then after 80s, Fantastic is also, it has stopped regularly publishing. So some new magazines which are mostly for children, they take the place of Fantastic for translation. So some of them are Kishore Ganvik and Anandamala, Shuk Tara and Kishore Bharatis. So some of notable science fiction published in these magazines are Niranjan Singha's Time Pussy, written by actually Asimov. Uh, Mukul Guha translated Bradbury's Lokho Bochore Chorui Bhati. Sridhar Senapati translated I. O. Evans' Pathor Kheko. Inaki Chattopadhyay translated Robert Silverberg's পৃথিবীর শেষ দেখে এলাম, even Arthur C. Clarke's Prohori. So they translated lots of comics also, comics of Star Wars, Star Trek. They translated those comics and published it in Anandamela. Stanislav Lem, very famous Polish SF writer. Manovendra Bandyopadhyay translated his work and published a book, Mukhosh o Mrigoya. There are some translation science fiction came during some time, this time, like H.G.Wells' Kaljoi Kalpabigyan Sankalon is by Devshayita Kutir, H.G.Wells' The Invisible Man, Lekhani Prokashani, Isaac Asimov's Kalpabigyaner Rahasya Golpo, translated by Shouren Bhattacharya, published by Kishore Gyan Vigyan. Bishya Shrestha Mini Science Fiction, translated by Ronen Ghosh from Pratishruti. Bishya Shera Kalpabigyan, translated by Amit Chakraborty from Punoshcho. So this kind of translation anthology was published during this time. And not only from westernized translation, there are some notable translation from other Indian language. We all know about এসব আগামীকাল হয়েছিল by edited by Balfour K. That's it all happened tomorrow. That's famous anthology, and it translated by Nabarun Bhattacharya. He was also a very famous writer in Bengal, and it was published by NBT. Also, very famous science fiction writer and scientist J.B. Narlikar. His works was also translated into Bengali. One is Mohajagotik Bishforon by it was published by Shaiba, and Bamun Fildona, translated by Subrata Bosu. It was published by Shahitya Academy. Those are the very famous work during this time, which was translated from other Indian language to Bengali. So that's again another era, post-independence translation era, and most notably, most of these translation which were either in public domain or those translations were not really uh, taken permission of. Those translations are without permission. That's why those translations are only for some stories. There was no real translated science fiction book published from Bengal. Though lots of people translated lots of stories from West, but they are not really taken permission from for those stories. So in the current scenario, the things has been changed a bit. So I'm going to talk about this now. So in 2016, Kalpabiswa was formed. In Kalpabiswa, we started writing science fiction and publishing science fiction, Bengali science fiction mostly at the beginning. So with original science fiction, we started translating different science fiction from not only from West. We translated Japanese science fiction, we translated Spanish science fiction, we translated Russian science fiction. So we did some specific magazine issue on these kind of science fictions. When we started publishing books from Kalpabiswa, then one of the Spanish science fiction anthology was published. The writer was Spanish science fiction writers Carlos Sichowski Con, and in Science Kalpabiswa magazine, Devajyoti Bhattacharya, Ranin Ghosh, Supriya Das, Ankita, Bishwadip De, Shandipan Chattopadhyay, Joshadhara Rai Chaudhuri, Riju Anguli, and many more translated science fiction from different languages. So there are some notable works also have been published and done during current era. One of the translation magazine in Bengali is called Anubad Patrika. In 2019, Anubad Patrika published a new issue on translated science fiction. So in that issue, Ananya Basu, Ankita, Soham Guha, Sukarna Datta, Shantu Bag, and lots of other people translated science fictions. Last 5 years, if I see that there are some new translation books have been published from different publications. So Joydhak publication, they published translation science fiction books called FTL, Dystopia, Soviet Science Fiction, Noshto Manush Kalpanaয়, ABC2, and Unubad Koro Shong. Those are all translated science fictions. So you can see that lots of Bengali science fiction is being produced from different language. Kalpabiswa published Edgar Allan Poe Rachana Sangraha, that's translated by Adish Bardhan. H.U.S. Kalpavalpa Samagro, again Adish Bardhan. Grohantorer Aguntuk, that's by Noni Vomik, Russian translation science fiction. Atul Jale's Shahur, that's a translation of Malakot Deep. Sherlock Holmes Professor Challenger or Mongol Groho, again translated by Adish Bardhan. Frankenstein 200, and currently just this year we published a Bengali translation science fiction from Hindi science fiction. That's a real achievement from us. It's called Mrityu Devata Onnanno, Nirbachito Hindi Kalpabigyan. So last 10 years we should look into the what's happening in the Bengali translation, because during this time all those stories that have been translated, they are actually mature science fiction. Those are not for consuming by uh, children. So before that, most of the science fiction that has been publishing or that was been translating into some other children magazine, those are for children. So now we are actually getting to read translated science fiction written for the adult section. So that's a very good thing. Another thing what's happening that now people are actually buying copyright from uh, Western publications, and they are publishing uh, translated science fiction with all the permissions. So this is a new thing that's happening in Bengal right now. Kalpabiswa has already procured translation rights of Ray Bradbury and Arthur C. Clarke. Also, we have been able to get the translation rights, some of the work of Stanshia Lim. Jadavpur University Press, that's a very prestigious press in Bengal. They have also get the translation right of Solaris. We are very excited about that book also. So people are now actually going out and reaching to other westernized publishers and buying the publishing right. So we are expecting to get more and more good and complete science fiction of famous westernized authors. And Kalpabiswa is also planning to translate more from Indian science fiction also. We are now working on Marathi science fiction. We are planning working on uh, South Indian science fiction and Assamese science fiction, and make more anthology in Bengali. So I guess that sums up the whole thing. So translation is very important, because otherwise we won't be able to understand what's happening in the other languages, how the world of science fiction is going or where it is going. So translation is very important. But another thing is also important, to translate from Bengali to English and other language. So that's another story. It hasn't been done really. People only translate from different language to Bengali, but it's really needed that other publishers come ahead and they start translating into other language from Bengali. Only then our this kind of translations and our culture and our writings will spread to other language and other people, and they can understand that Bengali or in any other language, there people are writing science fiction, good science fiction. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion. So if you want to contact me for any question or any information, please, I guess my contact information will be given by the organizer. Please, you can contact me if you want. Thank you.
Greetings to all. This is Dr. C.G. Sangeeta, Assistant Professor of English, Sri Sharada College for Women, Salem, Tamil Nadu. First of all, I would like to thank IASFS and its collaborators for providing this great platform for us. The title of our paper is VFX and SF. Science fiction is primarily concerned with the stories that describe futuristic literature, usually set in the future. When people started to say stories with fictional imagination, delivering them with visual style made them easy in conveying things better and more fictionally efficient way. In the year 2005 February, edition of ASFX magazine released the list of 50 greatest special effects, out of which minimum 60% was from films which are categorized under science fiction or science fiction works. Starting from the movie Le Voyage dans la Lune, filmmakers are so involved with VFX that now every short film are involved with them. A majority of audience today are unable to distinguish between what computer generated graphics are and how they have been implemented in film when they hear the term visual effects. Most of these effects are created through the use of CGI today. CGI effects were not introduced into filmmaking until well before CGI effects become common. This is because it uses a combination of manipulation, creation, or changing of imagery that is not part of the original shot of the film. This is conducted outside its original context. The artist had to be creative before computers had the graphical capabilities than they do today so that special effects could be created. In contrast, science fiction is something that enhances the ability of a writer to extend his ability to extend his power to the entire universe, starting from Star Wars and Frankenstein to the latest Bahubali and Avatar, The Way of Water. Every director wanted to stretch himself to what science fiction would lead to, starting from H.G. Wells to Charles David George Charlie Strauss. All wanted to make people think what science fiction is. That is, when people adapted to make movie from Le Voyage dans la Lune, created by Georges Méliès in 1902, till Doctor Strange, Madness of Multiverse by Sam Raimi, proved the bond with VFX and SF.
Hello, namaste. I am Dayananda Gangadhar, VFX Professionalist with more than 7 years of experience. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Srinarahari sir, who has given me an opportunity to be a part of Indian Association for Science Fiction Studies. He took me as a technical head, as you might have seen my previous video, and he also encouraged me to write this paper and also present in this session. I wasn't thinking that I can do this, but he actually inspired me. He told me that I can do this. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me an encouragement to do this. It was always been a fascination for me to be a VFX artist. It all started when I started watching this cartoon shows and listening to my grandma's stories. She told me once there was a king. He was very good at hunting. One day his wife asked him, "Can you just get me a deer with a golden horn?" And he said yes. I was thinking how a deer would be with a golden horn. I started imagining that is when I started thinking, why can't I just do something which really makes people understand what the story would look like. That is where I started reading storybooks, which was completely science fiction. I was reading a story with the character Dinga. I don't know if people had known that or not. It's a well popular known character among kids. He was a rat and he had an ability of Superman. He used to fly, save people, and I was very fascinated. I was wondering how people write all these beautiful things. Of course, I wasn't knowing the word science fiction then. But later, as I grew up as a VFX artist, I was introduced to science fiction. That is when I understood all this story came from these writers. And then I was thinking why people can't understand the stories. Then I understood there are people who can't even think about reading the stories or novels, but they are really good in watching movies. They are really good in understanding them. That is where I felt that VFX is completely connected to science fiction. Not only that, even James Cameron, who's a famous director, he told in one of his interviews that he wrote Avatar story long back in 1993-94, but he didn't have a technology to make that movie, which means from this we can able to understand even the directors. As a writer, he was looking forward for that technology to narrate his story because he knew that people may not be able to understand if he do it then. Not only science fiction inspired films, science fiction also inspired technology. Like for example, the autonomous driving technology which we are seeing nowadays was being introduced in movies long back. How movies got those ideas? It's all because of the writers. Mary Shelley, a famous science fiction writer from 1797 to 1851, did a remarkable job in a novel Frankenstein, which really inspired scientists to do an experiment on a human body with electricity to reanimate. Today's car having a technology of HUD, which is heads-up display, which was introduced long back by the writers in a films. Not only that, Lord of Rings, which was a famous novel, converted into movies. Harry Potter series written by J.K. Rowling converted into movies. And those authors told one thing. They never thought this would be such a beautiful screen to watch. Which means directors have implemented a technology of VFX to make the dream of a writer on the screen. Thus, I would really love to say that VFX and science fiction existed from a long back as a siblings. In one of the interviews, Etin Hughes, a science fiction writer and a professor at the University of Erasmus, elaborated briefly on a science fiction and told that science fiction isn't to predict the future, it is to prevent and inventing the future, which is meant to say that in respect to today's context of VFX, I would really like to say the series of Avengers which we are seeing now or the University of Marvels are trying to explain what's being told by this professor. Like a person traveling from one universe to another universe, or in other words we can say multiverse travelers are being written long back. But we didn't have a technology, now we are using this VFX technology in order to explain how it can be done. And also we can say that some of the technologies which were already being told in a movie are being introduced nowadays. Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson, he told in one of the interviews that his VFX company had won many awards for his movies, for the series and for the TV shows. He always proud of what it has been produced rather than getting what awards. We all knew Star Wars being created and developed by George Lucas. He once told in an interview that the films are getting so real that people are thinking completely none about the stories or novels written by us. Instead, they are into visual elements created by the filmmakers. But on the other hand, author Michael Kimmage tried to set the record straight in his book. But on the other hand, author Michael Kimmage tried to set the record straight in his book, The Secret History of Star Wars, by quoting there were many myths around the writing of Star Wars, many perpetuated by Lucasfilms and George Lucas himself. Which means we could easily say that the VFX has helped the writers and the directors to exaggerate the things which were actually being told in a movie, in a novel, in a movie. All the movies and televisions employ VFX for that extra tech. as we know, but science fiction genres banked on it. In order to create an alien world, VFX artists have had to use various techniques, including the saber effect, rotor techniques to add shine, as well as matte painting techniques and many innovative ideas to define the aesthetics of science fiction as we know it today. To quote an example, I would like to add up a movie, King Kong. This was done in the year 1933 by Marion Cooper. Even though his ideology was about to create 50-foot King Kong, it was only about 25 feet in the movie. Even though it took hundreds of manpower and mechanical strength, they couldn't be able to achieve what it was written in the script. In spite of it, they have taken many efforts in order to make it really animated. They did use so much of aluminum frame which has been welded so that they can able to move the parts. They also used so much of latex in order to give that texture effect, and they also used rabbit fur to make it look very realistic. In spite of all the efforts, it is necessary that the person has to die at the end of a movie. Thus, he died due to because of an airplane crash. But it didn't end there itself. Director Peter Jackson has taken advantage of VFX in the year 2005 to recreate the same King Kong, which looked 150 years old with the same height. And this was the first movie to take an advantage of motion capture by the actors. Of course, because of this technology, it also won an Academy Award for the best VFX work in that year. And it was completely shown. That was a huge success during that time because we didn't have a technology, but the story was really good. In 2000, in 21st century, they adapted the same story to tell the story beautifully in a better manner on screen with the help of VFX. One of the best example for the VFX being correlating with the science fiction was slit scan technology, which was uncommon with the filmmakers in early days. Stanley Kubrick 2001 A Space Odyssey film, a 1968 movie, was most influenced and strangest science fiction movies those days. It used slit scan technology with colorful lights and blurry bizarre images for the Stargates scene in which David Bowman takes a trip through it.
As for their creative processes employed in the past, it is true that they can do no longer be applied today, but the distinct visual styles they fashioned have left a mark on history. For example, in Space Odyssey, wormholes look the way they do because of Doctor Who, and space-time anomalies cause people and objects to warp and distort in certain ways and in so many ways. Today's science fiction films have a lot of the echo of early visual effects. And without the knowledge we have, we will see the echo of those films for years to come in classic science fiction.